Hey guys, how's it going? This is the Bald Metal Nerd coming at you with number six. No, just kidding. That's an Iron Maiden joke. Video number 6 of my Metallica series. So of course that means I'm going to be talking about their 1996 release Load. Now I actually got Load the day it came out. I was so excited to get it. I actually hopped the bus to go to a record store to buy this. Talk about archaic. It's something I don't think any kid would do in 2015, but I did it in 1996 without even thinking twice. But anyway, this was at the time probably the most anticipated album of my whole life. Um, Now at the time, Metallica were most definitely my favorite band and were considered the best metal band bar none. And boy, what a letdown. But I'm jumping ahead of myself a little bit here. Prior to the release of this album, the anticipation was huge. It had been 5 long years since the enormously popular Black Album. But what's funny is at the time during interviews, they were saying the band. I mean, they were saying things like, "Man, 5 years between albums is just crazy. We'll never do that again. We'll never go that long between an album again." Obviously, let's see. Here we are in 2015, and their last album, Death Magnetic, came out in 2008. That's longer than 5 years, guys. Just saying. But I guess that's another thing they greatly miscalculated on. Because, really early in their career, they said they'd never make a music video. Well, obviously, we know how that. But anyway, that's just a little bit of inside humor there. Now, there were rumors among Metallica fans, of course, that Metallica were going to go back to their roots after the less heavy Black album. So, yeah, people have been saying Metallica is going to make a killer album, and they didn't for almost 20 years now. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, how could you have been so uninformed about what the album would be like? Well, in today's age, you'd be right. But, back then, the internet was just getting underway for regular folks. And things like widespread file sharing and album leaks, it was still at least 4 or 5 years away. So it was easier to keep things under wraps back then. Plus, we didn't have cable at my house at the time, so I didn't see any MTV coverage about it. So I was kind of in the dark as to what this thing would be. Now, when I got to the record store and saw the album, I noticed they had changed their logo, which struck me as odd. I also saw the photo of them on the back with short hair. I, of course, still bought the album because it was a Metallica album, and they couldn't possibly let me down. So, anyway, after I walked out of the store, ripped open the CD case. Oh, by the way, this is the first album I bought. Well, not first album ever, first Metallica album where I didn't ever buy the cassette. I just bought the CD. I ripped the CD open, put it in my Discman, another archaic device, press play, and started off with Ain't My Bitch, which is a catchy blues rock song. Um, Track 2, 2 by 4. It's honestly a pretty mediocre mid-pace song. Track 3, The House That Jack Built. It's actually a pretty good atmospheric song. Track 4, Until It Sleeps. It's a good mid-pace song. Track 5, King Nothing. It's Enter Sandman with more blues, basically. Track 6, Hero of the Day. It's an okay ballad. Track 7, Bleeding Me. Now, this is easily my favorite song on this album. It's an excellent, slow, epic song. It's great. It's really the only thing that stands up to their classic material, in my opinion, on this album. Following that, you have Cure. It's an okay mid-pace song, but it's one of the heaviest on the album. In parts, it alternates between a simple rhythm and then some heavier parts. After that, you got Poor Twisted Me. It's another mediocre song, but it does have interesting main riff. After that, Wasting My Hate is the closest song on the album to their classic sound. Now, I know I said Bleeding Me is the only thing that's as good, but it doesn't really sound like their classic sound. Wasting My Hate is probably the heaviest thing they did on this. And it is a pretty solid song. After that, you've got Mama Said. It's an interesting ballad with a country western feel. Now, when that song first came out, I absolutely hated it, but again, I'm older now, so my stance on this is definitely softened. After that, Thorn Within. It's a good mid-pace song. After that, you got Ronnie, which is a really good and bluesy song. Following that, you've got the album closer, The Outlaw Torn. It's a good, epic closer. Now, I'm going to kind of give you two reactions. I'm going to give you my, reaction as a teenager, and I realized I didn't love this so much. I'm going to start with that. So bear with me, guys. Now, what the fuck, Metallica? Blues rock, a goddamn country song? What the hell happened to the metal? You have metal in your fucking name. You should be metal. At least that was my delayed reaction after I finally figured out I didn't love Load like their previous albums. Now, I'll admit for a while I defended the hell out of this album because I loved Metallica and they could do no wrong. Yes, I was one of those irritating Metallica diehards. I was a dumbass teenager. What can I say? But, we had the internet in my house. I think we got it slightly before Load came out. And I was interacting with a wide variety of other Metallica and metal fans back then. But after having many discussions with them and many further repeated listenings of this album, I started to realize Load wasn't that good, at least compared to their vintage material. Now, I think a lot of the controversy, and yeah, there was a giant shitstorm of controversy that surrounded this album, was simply a result of the era when this came out. It was the mid '90s. Alternative and grunge dominated rock music. There were constant articles and mentions in the media about whether metal was actually dead or dying. Now, it seems hilarious nowadays because metal's pretty fucking healthy, but back then it wasn't funny. And I had actually learned from this excellent documentary called Metal Evolution that people were questioning if metal was dead in the late 70s, which I find funny because metal had barely started at all by the late 70s. So it's just history was just repeating itself. Maybe, since we're about 20 years now after Load, at the end of this decade, maybe people will be like, is metal dying? Probably not. But you never know, right? Now, with Metallica, they were the biggest metal band in the world. They somewhat abandoned metal album. Oh, who am I kidding? They mostly abandoned metal on this album. Played Lollapalooza. It felt like an enormous betrayal at the time. I mean, Metallica was just the band that every metal fan was just over the moon about. It was just like the biggest slap in the face we could have gotten. I mean, that's the band that defined metal for millions, softened their sound, started playing bluesy rock, and started palling around with alternative rock guys. What? I mean, we needed a killer metal album from Metallica, and they utterly failed to deliver. But thankfully, due to the explosive growth metal had in the 80s, and now I'm not talking about hair metal, which thankfully mostly died. I'm talking about actual metal, like thrash, death, power, traditional, all that. Metal was far too established to simply die out. Plus, there was a huge amount of innovation and great metal produced in the 90s. Metal weathered the storm of the 90s just fine, regardless of what Metallica did. But now, almost 20 years have passed. My attitude towards this album has softened quite a bit. I don't hate it, but I don't love it either. I see it as another attempt by the band to change their sound, and I can't fault them for that, but I don't have to love it either. Some of their experimentation worked, some of it didn't. It's a huge step down from their classic material overall. I mean, I give this album only a 60 out of 100. There's just too much filler on this for it to garner a higher rating. But I will say the production on this album is actually quite good. Do you need to have this one? It's definitely not a must-have, but some of their experiments did turn out really well on this album, and if you can track down a cheap used copy of this somewhere, it might be worth picking up. And if you can just, decouple it from Metallica, the legend, it's a decent album. It's okay. Now for their next album, it's just a continuation of of Load. And of course, I'm going to be talking about Reload next. So that concludes this whole thing. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did like what you see, please thumbs up, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.